Hi, good morning, Programming 12. This video is going to be for students who struggled with the buttons checkpoint. I'm going to go over the answers for how to make it work, and hopefully it'll make more sense. Of course, feel free to ask questions anytime. And also, if you have finished this checkpoint, this video is probably not going to tell you anything new, so you can feel free to skip it. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, the tasks were basically, to start with, you were given the button class, and you got to make it work. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do it, and depending on your ideas and your, thought process, you might have tried one or the other way. So don't feel like you have to do both, but I'll show you both just in case you're curious. So the first way I'm going to show you to do it is to make an array of buttons. An array of buttons is great because you can automatically process it with a loop. And it also kind of looks like the movers checkpoint that we did. So that was what I found a lot of students tried first. It's not necessarily the easiest way, and later on I'll show you another way of how to do it. But say let's do it as an array. The first thing you got to do after declaring your array of buttons is to go and actually instantiate the array. This is something that a lot of students forgot to do. So, basically an array is also an object, so you got to create the array, and importantly, you have to say how many things are going to be inside of that array. So we have made 4 buttons basically, and then the next step is to actually go and create each individual button and store it in the array. So we're going to start by going from one element to the next, starting at element 0, 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice that's 4 total buttons. This starts numbering at 0, so it's a little weird, but that still gives us 4 buttons. And we're just going to assign into that element a new button. This here is me calling the constructor. So when you are looking at a class and you're trying to create an object from that class, you basically call the constructor and you use the new keyword along with that. So these details are basically all the information that the constructor is asking for. So here I have the color, XY coordinates, width, height, and then this is the label, text label, and then I have the two different colors, the normal and the highlight color. So that's what creates the button and makes it ready to go. That doesn't actually make the button show up on the screen, however. So in another step, in the draw function, this is all in the setup, notice. In the draw function, what we're going to do is we're going to write a loop that's going to go through all of the buttons and tell them to show. Let me just get rid of this little fancy thing for a second. And let's just look at our basic while loop. So our while loop is going to start at 0, which is because our button element count, or index count, starts at 0. Right? It's going to go as long as it's less than, as long as it's less than 4. Why? Because our numbers end at 4. 0, 1, 2, and 3 are all less than 4. And basically, I'm going to start at 0. I don't know why I left clicking. But anyways, I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to increase by 1 each time. So it's going to create that pattern, right? So I'll go button 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each time, as I increase that number, I am going to show that button. So that'll make the button show up. Now, had I done it differently, this is how I would make them show up. I would tell each individual button to show. I'd have to create each individual button. So instead of saying my buttons sub-0, I would have to say blue button and green button and so on. But that would also be another way of doing it. So, you can choose to do it either way. But this is kind of nice because I can do it in a bit of a loop. Okay, so so what about making the button actually click? So I'm going to add in an if statement, and I'm going to say, hey, if my button sub, whatever I is, dot clicked. So this is an important part here. I can check to see if it's clicked, and that's all part of the class. If I go over to the class has a clicked Boolean variable. And the whole point of the button is to show a visual, rectangle-like shape that is tactile, and it also manages that clicked button. Over here, I have clicked equals true or clicked equals false, depending on whether we're clicking on this thing or not. So that's what this whole button does. This is basically the goal, is to set click to true or false when the button is clicked. So I can check any particular button's clicked variable. If it's true, then I'm going to set the background color to the button's normal color, and that works out nicely because I have set the the normal colors and so on. And also, I am filling the background with this BKG variable, which I assign a value when I click the button. So those all kind of like connect together to make it work. If this was just using these sort of variables as opposed to an array, I'd have to have an individual if statement for each one. It's not necessarily bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a little bit more work. I could just check to see if a particular button is clicked and then set the background to whatever color it corresponds to. So I could have a series of if statements instead. But again, having an array allows me sometimes to make a loop, and sometimes not. So that's a slight advantage. Okay, so that's the first part of the checkpoint. In the next part of the video, I'm going to show you checkpoint part 2, which is going to be making it functionally decomposed. Funny, just fancy word for basically breaking up this stuff into functions. So first of all, my show function is very long, and not very, very long, but long enough. And I've already logically broke it down into 3 parts. I have sort of like draw the rectangle, draw the label, and then check if it's being clicked. And then I also have this code here that's being repeated over and over again. The actual logic of is the mouse touching the rectangle is built in. So I would like to put all these things into functions so that my code's a little bit more organized. I'll start with this code right here. This actually is all across here. This is an if statement or a Boolean expression that will basically evaluate true or false depending on whether or not my mouse is touching the rectangle that is the button. So I can take that and replace it. I'm just going to cut it, Command X or Control X, and I'm going to replace it with something along the lines of touching mouse. I'm going to make that a function. So if it's a function, and I'm putting it into an if statement, that means I have to make that a Boolean function. So I'm going to go to the bottom here. I'm going to make Boolean touching mouse. And I'm going to make a quick comment just to say this will return true. Oh, I got some OneDrive nonsense going on. Return true if mouse is touching the button. And the trick to this is really just this condition here. I just have to see if that's true, then I'll return true. And if that's false, I'll return false. So basically I can just say return that thing. And it will be able to tell if this is being clicked every time I call touching mouse. What does the return keyword do? Well, basically, it does this evaluation, and then wherever I call touching mouse will evaluate to whatever this evaluates to. So it's kind of like, substitution in algebra. Like I just gave a name to that logic. I just gave a name to it. I called it touching mouse, and effectively wherever I put touching mouse is the same as if I typed all this stuff here. So I can replace this with touching mouse, and of course it's a function call, so don't forget the parentheses, and I can replace this with touching mouse. So not only does that make my code more readable, like that reads kind of like English now. Also, if I want to make a change to touching mouse for whatever reason, it changes in all 3 places at once if I make a change to the actual function itself. So that's a significant improvement, I would say. So that's a good start. Now I can break down the show function into smaller functions. So instead of here's the rectangle part, I'm going to call this function, all this stuff here is going to be called draw button, I don't know, rectangle, like body, I don't know, draw button. I'll just say draw button. It doesn't exist yet, so I got to go make it. So I'm going to go down here. After touching mouse, notice the last brace, I'll put in void. And this is going to be a void function. It's not going to be embedded in any kind of if statement or anything like that. It's just a list of things to do. Draw button. I'm going to paste in all that code in here, and that's great. So now draw button. I don't really need this comment. The function itself is a comment. It reads like English. Like, what does this do? It probably draws the button. Now I'll do the draw label. Draw label. And that is going to just be this stuff here. So I can go down and make a new void function. And again, void functions are great for just a list of statements that you want to run. It doesn't answer a question, it just does some stuff. In particular, this draw label draws the text label on the button. It also manages the tactile nature, actually. So I might actually include that in here. Draws the rectangular body of the button and manages tactile stuff. I don't know, tactile interaction? It's a fancy name for like making it highlight when the mouse goes over it. Draws the text label and handles tactile stuff. I don't know, getting kind of lazy. I could do better. Last but not least, there's a little bit more to my show function, and that's this. This basically just determines whether we've been clicked on or not. So I'm going to put that in a separate function. So I'm going to say check for click. So we have to make that function. Again, it's a void function. I'm not building it into an if statement, or I'm not, it's not going to return an answer. It's not going to answer anything. It's just going to do something. So I'll put in void check for click. Okay, so now here's my show function. It just reads like a to-do list. It's almost like a checklist of the things that the show function does. It draws a button, draws a label, and then it checks for click. Inside of the draw button, we got basically two parts. It's like check for tactile, and then draw the button. So even this could be like a little bit improved, possibly. And same over here. I see we got sort of a bit of a repeated code, so I could see how this could even get better. Some kind of like tactile function or something. And then we have the check for clicked, so that manages that. There's a few other things we can do to improve this code. If you'd like, I will put in a separate video, sort of an elite level of function decomposition, where like we'll notice some other this is being repeated here, and like some of that could be nicely solved as well. Okay, so then that's going to be the end of the part 2. So part 3 of this checkpoint, we're going to be looking at the image function. And for the image function, we're gonna make it have an image instead of just having a text label. So right now we only can put on text, but the last part of it is to put in an image on the body. So I guess I have to go get an image. I don't have an image handy. So let's find an image. We go to pictures, and what do we got here? Some Minecraft things. Here's a picture of a cat. Actually, I'll just copy it. Fire stars from the Warriors series. Yes. Anyone a Warriors fan from back in the day? Aaron Hunter. So this is going to be my picture I'm going to load. Okay, so what I'd like to do is be able to make it so that, I could put a picture of Firestar right here on this button. That'd be fantastic. So how do I do that? Well, to start with, our button class is going to have a new instance variable. This is really key. The variable should be of type pimage, because that's going to store your picture. And then we should be able to make two different constructors. A constructor that accepts the text and puts the text on, but then a second constructor that accepts a picture instead, and we can store that picture inside of the button and show that. So that's going to be straightforward. In order to put that up, I'm going to have to make a pimage. I got button pick already, so I'll have to load button pick. So this will actually load the file, and then I can pass this into the constructor. So let's say button pick equals load image. And what I'll do is I'll type in the name of the file, firestar.jpg. All right. It doesn't seem to like that. Button pick, that's because I didn't capitalize this. So I guess I won't capitalize it here either. So now I can, instead of black, for example, I can send it button pick. And then my button will be able to show the picture of Firestar, the amazing cat. The constructor will do this, and that'll work fine, but my show function is not set up to make use of it yet. So actually, if I run it, I'm not even sure. Will it crash? Oh, wow, I guess it is ready to go. Whoa, look at that. The cat did show up. So let's go and see why that is. I guess I had already done it. So, oh yeah, here's my label. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is the story. So everything is good to go, except that I have to choose for my label. Do I draw the text label or an image? And it's basically depending on whether my image was null or not. So null means if like an object is null, it means it doesn't exist. It hasn't been created yet. So if I called the text constructor, I never actually set my image to anything. It's still null. So in other words, only if I use this constructor does it call. And I clearly use this constructor because I send an image. So processing knows, oh, this one happens. So that will get set to a picture. However, in these ones, I didn't send a picture, so it's going to be null because I don't actually assign it any value here. So that means that this if statement can decide, do I draw the text? If there's no picture, draw the text. Otherwise, draw the picture. That's basically what that if statement is saying. This picture is a little bit big, and I wish I had an art team that could round those corners for me. I don't, so I'm not going to bother. But I will put in width times 0.9, height times, oh no, this is the wrong one. This is it here. I'll times it by 90%, 80%? 80% sounds pretty good. Some number so that it kind of shows up with a border. And then you can change that border size to whatever you think is appropriate. And that'll just work. And notice that it automatically sizes it and everything because of the width and height parameters into image. Okay, so there you go. There's the 3 different checkpoints. I hope that made sense, and I hope that was useful to you. And I will invite you to ask more questions if any of that stuff still doesn't make sense. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care.